You know, the big ticket safety items like pool safety or cracks in the sidewalk or getting rid of the ice after a snowstorm. You know, these are very clear things that are obvious for people to be on top of. But some of the more subtle factors, like the drinking water, especially if you're on a private supply, the indoor air quality if you're in an area where there's high radon, and you won't know that until you test. These things are not so obvious, and that's why we're out here trying to promote safe environmental health practices so that the awareness is spread and people are looking at those factors as well.
Get off of our paper.
What most people don't realize is that the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States is radon. It's an odorless, colorless gas that comes up naturally from bedrock, uranium-containing bedrock, which surprisingly is pretty common in New York State. And being a gas, it can be drawn into a house, especially in colder weather, sort of like water going down a drain, but any crack in the foundation or a sump pit, it can pull up soil gas. And radon is a constituent of soil gas. Radon is a radioactive particle that converts from a gas to a particle in your lungs, and it can just sit there and continue to send off these emissions of radioactivity onto lung material, sensitive lung material, that will lead to damage and cancer over the long term. Especially because lungs in young children are rapidly growing, and that growing tissue is very sensitive to things like radiation. So one simple thing that people can often do is just seal up the basement foundation and sump pits to keep it from coming into the home to start with. Lead has been recognized now for decades as something that will damage brain development. The most critical period is very young children, because lead gets to the brain more easily in the early ages, and it just lodges there in the brain and continues to do damage to brain development and learning. So we know statistically that children that were exposed to higher levels of lead do less well in school, higher dropout rate, even a higher rate of criminality looking at older ages. So it affects ability to get jobs and earn income. And this is all based upon early life exposures to lead.
Do you want a drink?
Regarding lead levels in drinking water, in tap water, if you're on a public supply that's quote-unquote city water, that lead level has been tested. On a private well, you have no idea. And the other problem with lead, even on a public supply, is that water can, if it's sitting in local pipes for a long period of time, it may still leach some amount of lead. If you've got old plumbing, which is basically before the 1980s, when there was still commonly in use lead solder. And so any residences or daycare centers that were, say, built in the 1980s or before should have a program where first draw in the morning, the first water should be flushed, so that children, if there was any water sitting in the pipes overnight, especially important if no one was there over the weekend, that Monday morning you just run the water for a minute, and any water that was sitting in the pipes. It's just a good general precaution. But it is also important to know the lead level in your water, especially if you're on a private well. I think one of the most common mistakes with pesticides is that people think that can of bug spray that you can buy in the supermarket shelves, number one, is that it's safe for young children to be around, and number two, that it's effective. You know, you really want to get, say, ants at the nest. And a bug spray, you may feel like you're powerful, that you can kill a few ants that you see crawling across the counter, but that doesn't really get at the problem very effectively. And surprisingly, studies have shown that the pesticide does not stay where you point and shoot it, but it ends up getting into the air and falling onto the carpeting, falling onto plush toys, and children will be the ones that get, not you as the person spraying, but the children in the home and the pets will get the most exposure. And the other is food. Pesticides are in non-organic food, and so there is a residue that you can get from eating commercial produce. Usually that is not a real high level of exposure compared to what you can get from the lawn chemicals and from the household sprays that people often engage with, and ends up again with young children and pets getting the lion's share of the exposure. So good advice is don't use a pesticide around the home. If you need to get rid of a wasp nest and you think you can do it yourself, just make sure that it's not near where children are going to be doing any play or spending any time. Our website is a great resource. It's got tons of information on whatever topic you might find or not be aware of. So take a look at the variety of topics. It's really a call to action for you to become more engaged and aware of the various issues and make use of our resources.